If you may or may not be familiar with marketing, there are a lot of methodologies out there, right? So what I look to do is simplify that process, because I recognize a lot of people that I may work with, whether they be event organizers, sales teams, they really just need to simplify what does that look like and how can we remember it. That's why I use AC/DC TNT. And if you're familiar with the rock band, let me know. Leave a comment in the comments. AC/DC, you know, TNT, dynamite. Anybody? Let me know. Normally I pull it up on on YouTube, but I'm going to go ahead. So really, I want to clarify for the presentation, people that I work with, I am not here to convince anyone that events are an effective platform. I'm here to make effective campaigns using events as an effective platform. So there are so many platforms that you can use in your business to connect with your audience. And what I mean by platform, LinkedIn is a platform, Facebook is a platform, YouTube, print advertising. I know, Patty, you have an amazing podcast and magazine. That is a platform. So events being a platform is a choice that we use in business. So I'm not here to convince anybody that events are an effective platform. Truth be told, they're not for everybody. It's not for every business. And that's really where we first want to identify, are events going to be effective? Are they worth the time, money, resources, energy, right? When there are so many platforms to choose from. So I like that quote. I start my presentation that way just to clarify. Let me know in the comments if you already believe that events are an effective platform for you and your business. If that's maybe why you're jumping into my session, let me know. I would love to see in the comments and see how you're currently using events. Secondly, what type of events do you consider effective for you? Are you using trade shows, conferences, lunch and learns, networking? There are so many different types of events. So yes, we have events as a platform. Then we want to identify what type of events are effective for you. So leave some comments, let us know. All right. Before we get into the customer journey and really breaking down what that AC/DC and what that looks like, I do want to address, given that we are in a situation, we have COVID-19 going on, we have travel bans, we have a lot of conferences, trade shows, events that really are on hold. So I just want to take a brief moment here. What can we do now? This is a big question that I've been getting a lot of questions, a lot of phone calls, a lot of messages, because there are a lot of companies that rely on events as their platform of choice. And what can they be doing now if they're not happening? So here are just some high level tactics and conversations. I'm more than happy to jump on a call with anybody here as well. But these are just really three main focus areas. Re-engage with past events and strengthen relationships. Now is such a great time to revisit the past events that you've gone to, whether it be in the last 6 months, you know, right before all of this kind of hit the fan, and also from 2019. So re-engage. I actually have a video. I have some templates, a whole nother session really on how to develop a very strong re-engagement campaign and following up with people. Number two is consider and educate yourself, like you are here today, on hybrid tactics. So using virtual along with hybrid. So hybrid meaning virtual and in person. So both online and personal touch points. So there's a lot of kickback if print is dead. Just ask Patty. She has a magazine, right? And that's a digital platform. However, there are digital mailings. There are personal touch points that we can add in a phone call. It can be a personalized email, not just an automated chat bot. Hybrid tactics being taking a step back and integrating, how would I communicate with this person if they were right there in front of me? So consider and educate yourself. Like this platform, Hopin, is a great platform that can be used for virtual, but also when events come back, it can actually tie in the in-person and virtual worlds together. Okay, and thirdly, and what we're going to discuss on today's session is to revisit some strategies and the process, really the foundations when we want to use events, and come back to the fundamentals. What are we doing before, during, and after? There are so many people, companies that use events, they see the value, they have fun at these events, and then they leave the events and say, why did I do that? Was that really worthwhile? Why are we doing these events? Could I benefit and connect with my audience better with alternative platforms? And so now is a great time to consider, how are you approaching before, during, and after? So that's really who we want to, or what we're going to discuss further on today's session. So I'm going to take a moment before jumping in and address some of the questions here, or comments, and let me know, why did you want to jump in this session? Do you know me? Do you know my process? Just leave a comment as well as to what you're hoping to gain from this session. And with that, who does this really work well with? Who do I work well with? Who does this make sense? And let me know if you identify with any of these areas. Sales directors, business to business, business development, people that are working with other businesses to sell their product or services, sales teams, marketing teams, and decision makers. And decision makers could be a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, if you run your own business. So let me know if any of those identify with you, and also secondly, what you're hoping to gain from today's session. That way, if it's not directly in the presentation, I would love to address offline and follow up with each of you. All right, I see decision makers. I see Al joined because I want to learn more about the work and trade show event space. Great, well, thank you for that feedback. All right, so like I mentioned, today we want to talk about the customer journey. And I break this down really into a couple different phases. So phase one, we want to set that foundation and identify, what does that journey look like? Phase two, once we have that main foundation, then we can consider, how are we going to increase that conversion? How can we take that foundation, optimize it to increase ROI? That's rate of investment, right? So that would be for all your time, all your resources. How much are you getting back out of that event, out of that platform? And then phase three, we can optimize those results. So phase one, we need to at least have the event. We at least need to have a map in the first place. Many times people just, either dive in to the logistics and they just run with it. And that doesn't mean that they won't find success. That does not mean that they won't have an event. That does not mean that they won't be able to have a successful trade show booth. But at the same time, if we can at least map out that foundation, then phase two, we can optimize what we have and increase that conversion. And then phase three is we can continue to optimize. Okay, so I'm going to break those down. A little background and tiny little segment without going into a whole degree of marketing. This funnel may look very familiar, whether you've taken a webinar, whether you've taken any sort of marketing background. If you are a business owner, a lot of people teach this traditional marketing. A lot of marketing agencies use this traditional funnel. Let me know in the comments, does this look familiar? Are you familiar with a marketing funnel, and does this look familiar? Where you address who your audience is, and whether it be that you're using paid advertising, organic, you are reaching out to the audience with your content in hopes that they come and that you can spark interest, right? This is a very traditional approach. Once they have expressed interest, whether it be a landing page, a webinar, whether it be a phone call, they have expressed some sort of interest. And then people say, Well, now we have to nurture. And then once you can nurture, build that relationship, then you can convert into a lead. And then once you've converted the lead, then you pass it off to the sales. And that is a very common approach. And guess what? It does work for certain industries. It does work for certain structures. It does work for certain businesses. However, I'm here to share the type of marketing that works well with the events that I use, with the accounts that I use, and how it's different. So I want to tap in here. And this is where the AC/DC comes in. And what we're doing is we're actually inverting that. And this is account-based marketing. So at a very high level, first and foremost, we are looking to attract those decision makers. We're looking to attract which accounts are ideal for us. So when you go to an event and you are working a trade show booth, guess what? There's only a selected so many companies and people at that event. We're not advertising to the world. We're not advertising to the entire demographic outside of those walls. So when we're working at an event, we can become very honed in who are the decision makers. And I'll give an example. For this event specifically, put on by Gracie, I looked at the pre-registrant contacts, only that. Went through and selected who on LinkedIn would I like to connect with. Now, notice I don't know yet if they're a prospect or a potential partner, an ally, but I was able to hone in and say this particular event, there's only a selected, there are 214 people specifically. And out of those, which of them do we want to identify? So when we go to an event, there's only a select, and we want to hone in and use the event as a very specific campaign. So what we're looking to do is step one, start with the track. Then what we can start to do is convert and connect with those people very specifically. And a lot of times this is a very higher touch approach. It's a customized approach. We're not using chatbots yet. We're not using automation. We're at the event or even before the event, just like I explained, for this event, where it's a very personalized, we are looking to connect at this point and just better understand who it is that we're talking to. Who is it beyond their first name? So at the event, sometimes it's hard to remember their first name. But what we're really looking to do at this point is understand who it is that we're talking to and start to segment. Could they be a potential strategic partner? Could they be a potential lead? And really pre-qualify through conversation how we want to then continue the conversation. So if we're at a trade show booth, and Al, I would love your feedback as well. Al, he works with promotions and brand ambassadors. And when you're at that trade show booth, we're not selling to people just yet. What we're looking to do is connect and have the opportunity to continue the conversation. But how do we continue the conversation if we don't yet know if they're a potential lead and they're actually interested in our services? Or they could actually be a really ideal strategic partner, someone that can introduce us to new networks, new opportunities, new stages. And guess what? If you're driving the conversation the same way for everyone that you're talking to, we're really missing out on some of that opportunity. So number 3 of our AC/DC would be to deliver and nurture. Yes, nurturing is a part of this. Now, the main difference here, especially using events, is we are actually delivering before we even necessarily have a commitment or building that relationship. We need to deliver something. We need to give something of value now. And what is that? And understanding what that is, whether it's your own event, whether it's providing value and what you're providing at the trade show or at your lunch and learn. What are you delivering now? And again, to better qualify and determine how you're going to continue that relationship. And the last being close and retain account relationships. And so what this methodology does is you're very specific. It's very high touch. And then what we can do is we can customize that lunch and learn. We can customize that trade show. We can customize each of those campaigns very specifically, knowing who and why they're going to be there. So that is a very broad base. I'm going to move forward. I do have all of these slides moving forward. So if anybody would like these after, absolutely. I at least wanted to break down what those four are. Now, the reason why I like to use a hopscotch, one, it's unique, it's fresh, and a funnel actually shows what happens when things go as planned, right? Through this attract, convert, deliver, and close, there's actually multiple steps that we want to take to get to the next block, and that's how we play hopscotch. So how many of you played hopscotch as a kid or on a playground, or maybe do you have children that still do? Is that even a thing? I don't know. I don't have children yet, but I remember this game. And what happens quite often in marketing, in sales, in events, people throw their pebble from block 1 and they go in to block number 7. And I'm going to break down what each of these are. And what 7 is, they're putting their message out there and trying to deliver and trying to invite people immediately. Now that does work if you already have a relationship, if you're already warm in their network, but then they're expecting them to close. And where we can start to optimize is when we start adding in and customizing each of these blocks, which I will dive in a little further. And the third way is we can then optimize our event results is what I call the 6 foundations. Again, I will go through this. I have the slides. The purpose of today's session is really to break down the 3 phases. So we're setting the foundation. We are increasing conversion through our hopscotch, through each of those stages. And then thirdly, we can start to optimize. And how we do that is through event strategy, our logistics, optimizing our outreach approach, optimizing our nurturing, optimizing our sales and our packaging, and optimizing our metrics. What is working, what is not working. Yes, I will definitely send the slides for sure. Okay, and how are we doing on timing? I think we're doing pretty well. Let me just see. Let's see here. Okay, so let's break down phase 1. We first want to lay down our foundation. There are 9 steps that I use every single time that I consider an event strategy. So before we can start laying out those blocks, what they look like, these are 9 steps. Again, I'm more than happy to elaborate. This is a whole session in itself. But what we are looking to do is identify why have the event, who should be at the event, who is needed, when is the event, what are the goals and the objectives, what is that customer journey, why are we doing this, how are you going to measure whether or not it is a success or not. So number 1 of setting the foundation is setting up the strategy, and these are the 9 steps I go through every single time. Once we can identify that, what we're then looking to do is break down what the customer journey looks like. So here are those blocks, those 12 steps. Under attract, we want to attract the target audience. Who are they? How are we going to reach them? Where are they? And what do they want from us? What is the call to action? Have a very clear message of what you want them to do. If we don't know what we want them to do, how can we communicate that to them? And call to action does not necessarily mean a landing page or an opt-in or some sort of drip email, but call to action, what is it? And then retarget. Some people may never leave that attract stage, but we can always retarget, revisit before moving forward. Whoops, wrong way. In the convert stage, this is where we want to follow up with value. giving value, and a lot of times it may be customized or at least a high touch, at least understanding who you're talking to and provide that value. We can better segment the audience, whether they're decision makers, whether they have a budget for us, are they strategic partners? So we want to start to segment and then continue to engage and convert into connections. In the delivery, this is where we can send our invites. This is where we can give what can they expect when they attend our event or to our booth or to our webinar. And for instance, Gracie did a great job showing us speakers, showing us presenters what we can expect so that we can be prepared effectively. And then thirdly, and this is hit or miss with a lot of companies, is having that very streamlined follow-up, and also for people that missed. There are a lot of times people register and don't show up. So how can we bridge that gap? And then thirdly, the close. And this as well, you can do all of these steps amazing. And then if we don't have a very clear way to screen out who potential leads are, potential people that come by your booth, or even a screening process. Patty, you're a great example of a very strong strategic alignment with myself, where we've done a lot of screening and discovery together as strategic partners. And now we have a new relationship. And then we can continue to analyze and adjust. So I want to pause here because I want to at least regroup with you guys here. I have two different screens going on. Before we dive any deeper, I want to get some feedback. How is this making sense? I want to make sure that that AC/DC and the differences as to traditional marketing and account-based, where we very specifically are working each event as a very unique campaign. So I would love some feedback. Is this something that makes sense? Awesome. Let me see. Yes, Sherry and Patty, I would love for you to connect as well. Okay, perfect. So we have a few more minutes here as well. What the next part of the presentation is well, where do we start? Because realistically, I have them here. Realistically, it's a lot to implement all 12 stages all at once, especially if this is something new. And so where can we start? Where can we simplify? And if nothing else, let's identify block 1, 4, 7, and 10. And in the slides, we'll remember who is our audience, what value are you providing, what is it that you're inviting them to, and how are you going to screen them out? Okay, so attract, follow with your value. What are you inviting them to? What is your ask? And how are you going to screen them out? If nothing else, and you know what? I see a lot of results even when people can implement and find this clarity for their events. Even if we start here, we'll start seeing and optimizing those results. This is an example when I share the slides. This is what I mean. The process is the same, but your tactics and your strategies, what's so fun is each and every one of you, all of my clients, every single one uses different tactics. So some of you may be on LinkedIn, some of you may be on Instagram, some of you may be on Facebook, some of you may be on YouTube, some of you may be using paid advertising, some of you may be going to the offices. So the process is the same, but we can customize each one. Then, once we have that foundation, once we have at least an understanding which blocks and it's working, we at least have a wheel, right? We at least have a system. Now we can increase that conversion. And these blocks are intended to help increase that conversion. So having a very clear call to action, segmenting your audiences and your campaign so that they're more personalized, so that the messaging falls in line with who you're speaking to. Having that what to expect campaign, that way it minimizes the no-shows, it minimizes the confusion. These are ways that we're going to start to increase that conversion to enhance the system and the foundation that we've just laid down. And then, of course, new business relationships and how can we retain. So again, this is a map. This is what I help people understand and visualize. Start adding in those value pieces and segmentation. And now here's the follow-up, what to expect. All right, and thirdly, this is how we can start to optimize. And so this is third priority, because guess what? You'll still have an event, you'll still have a trade show, you'll still have a campaign as long as we have the foundation. Now it's going from here and optimizing, getting to the next stage. And that's where blocks 3, 6, 9, and 12 come in. Yikes. That, to start out, can be extremely intimidating. And this is just an example, by the way. Point being, if somebody were to jump in looking at this saying, oh my gosh, how am I going to create an event or communication or have an effective, because guess what? We want to have this before, during, and after our event. But we at least want to simplify, and then we can start to optimize those results, increase those conversions. And then the last piece here that I want to hit on, again, once we have that map and we have that foundation, the whole idea is we need to prioritize, to optimize. I've been doing this over a decade. I've been in events. I love events. I love the marketing and sales that go into it. But truth be told, there is a lot that goes into it, and we need to be able to prioritize what we need to focus on so that we can optimize. Prioritize to optimize. Otherwise, what's happening is we go in and we get that map and it's so much, and we're only giving half the effort into each of these components. So I'd rather focus and prioritize. And then this is what I call the 6 foundations. This, again, is another session. What's involved? Each one of these have their own checklist. So once we have our map, once we have our foundation, this is where it gets really fun. And this is where we can really start to increase conversion, continue to optimize, increase the logistics, increase the outreach, the nurturing, things of that sort. And then the TNT. As we talk about AC/DC, leave me in the comments. Did the AC/DC, does it make sense? Are you liking that? Is it something that we could at least have another conversation, see if it may align differently than maybe what you're doing right now, or in conjunction, right? We're not replacing traditional tactics. What we're doing is creating campaigns specifically that also use this methodology. The TNT is how we optimize that. We are optimizing our traffic. We are honing in. We are really understanding who that traffic is. We are nurturing and continue to optimize that nurture in the relationship. And we are continuing to track what's working and what's not working. So the TNT component is how can we continue to optimize. Okay, great. So we have a few minutes here. I'm not going to talk a bunch about me, but I wanted to have these in the slides. Why I do what I do, why it may be worth your time to stick around, check out some of my other content. I have a lot of content, a lot of videos, a lot of ways to help understand. I've been in events really my entire career. I have shifted from the logistical side, which is really who needs to be where and when, what needs to be where, how does it get there, what time coffee comes out. But really, I've been able to shift and focus on helping companies, like I've mentioned, using events effectively. And that goes beyond logistics. As much as we want coffee to be there, the coffee at the end of the day is not going to make or break that success of the event itself. So it's a combination. So yes, I help professionals, I help companies convert their marketing and their costs into the ROI. That way, when you leave the event, you feel good, you understand that we have that plan ready to go. And I opened my company in 2016. I was in corporate for 7 years. I did run a B2B marketing division. We had 70 outside sales reps nationwide, and really all of those campaigns used, whether it's lunch and learns, client appreciation, campaigns, trade shows, conventions. And really the gap that I'm looking to fill is to connect the marketing and sales. That is one of the biggest differences between the traditional marketing funnel and the ACDC, is that we are integrating and it is a relationship. If you look at my testimonials, many of them come from sales directors, business development, because we're actually supporting on the marketing side and integrating with the sales teams. I just wanted to be able to expand what I say, unleash my own potential, unleash event potential. I was in the mortgage industry, didn't want to only be held in the mortgage industry. So that is why I opened my company and continue to share.